He is a god of the game.
Attack or defend, result or process. Are these the basic criteria to define a coach? And how do we see the biggest and the most successful managers across various sports? Man City's ability to produce unlikely upsets have the EPL title race wide open, whereas every top team in Serie A drop points. US women's soccer players changing the face of women in team sports, Indian women's disappointing display in New Zealand, a 16-year-old Grandmaster upsetting Magnus Carlsen, and has the NBA All-Star just become another celebrity event? Let's go!
Absolutely world class!
Hello and welcome to Sports Chacha. We are back with another episode, another topic, but the same co-host, Ishan. Hi.
Hey guys, hope you had a great week. We have a very interesting topic today. I'm very excited to talk about it with the Balster.
Oh, great. See, we have a lot to talk about, as Ishan said, but we will start with the biggest upset of the weekend. In fact, I should actually say it's the second biggest upset of the weekend. The biggest upset of the weekend, we will talk about that towards the end of this episode in the speed point section. But the second biggest upset of the weekend is Spurs defeating City. I feel this result defied a lot of logic, but if you actually look a little further, Conte actually had a very good record against Pep, and Pep has a poor record against Spurs in general.
No, I think it was what a meaning. I saw the game. It was incredible. Very dramatic. Obviously, with the almost like a injury time winner by Harry Kane. Great game by Kulusevski. I don't think ever he's 21 years old. I don't think he's ever completed 90 minutes. He was pretty dead by the end of it, but Conte still kept him on, and that made the difference because he had the last assist. But I think you're right in terms of like City has these games, or I would say Pep has these games under his belt, a couple of times this season where everything in a way falls apart. Like Spurs came into this game with a horrible run. Nobody expected this. And they pulled it out, and it made the Premiership a little more interesting. I know nobody thought it would be, but it's suddenly a little more interesting.
Yeah, and Liverpool definitely have more than a sniffing chance at the title, and even the top four race also become interesting. Like Spurs, who are actually slipping away in terms of the top four challenge, suddenly become again one of the front runners to finish in top four. And to add to that, United had a good result, Arsenal had a very good result, Chelsea again had a very good result. So that Chelsea, apart from Chelsea, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 are really interesting. Chelsea seems to be like caught perfectly in the middle of this two chaos and has found their spot in number 3 right now. They're pretty safe there.
Yeah, and I think Chelsea is that with the squad they have. I'm a little disappointed with how boring their football is. Meaning watching their games is a bit of a struggle, especially in the last couple of months. But they didn't look like they had a result coming against Crystal Palace. But a late goal, I think, got the 3 points they needed. But I think you're right. Like United finally had a result. But also Spurs, I think, would be my favorite for top 4 because they have got so many games in hand. If they win those games, they're going to be quite clear on through into top 4. But Spurs is Spurs. They're like the Napoli of the Premiership. You can never count them in for anything.
That's a very interesting comparison, actually. So great. So since we are talking about Pep always has a game like this every season, and how Conte or coaches like Mourinho, coaches like Tuchel always has a way to get to Pep. Like these managers, I don't know, maybe they're not doing anything. It's just they are inside Pep's head all the time. So Pep always tries to overthink and outsmart these coaches and kind of, shoots at his own foot most of the times, and we have seen this time and again. Now this actually kind of segues nicely into the topic that we actually wanted to discuss for this episode, which is the different styles of coaching or managing, whatever you want to call. Now, Isha, let's just start with, what I consider is the two most popular broad categories. Let's say a defensive coach and an offensive coach. So when I say a defensive coach or an offensive coach, what comes to your mind first? How do you fundamentally identify someone as an offensive coach or let's say a defensive coach?
When you look at defensive, right, like the tradition, when the time when we grew up watching football, right, defensive coach was probably, you know, the Serie A at that time, if you recall, the likes of AC Milan, the Juventus of that time. They were not low scoring teams, but the foundation of the team was built on solid defense. And obviously, the icons of our generation at that time were all defenders, right? If you ask anyone who saw those years of Italian football, they would probably remember the names of defenders more than forwards, barring Ronaldo Nazario, right? Uh,
Yeah.
we all know the Maldinis, the Nestas, the Costa Curtas, the Cannavaros. Those are the legendary defenders, and that's what made Italian football at that time such a stalwart. So I think I would say defensive football right now is the word used by social media as parking the bus. That I do not believe is defensive football. Defensive football is using defense as a foundation to build an attack. And one of the biggest proponents of that was Jose Mourinho, who focused on counter-attacking football. Like the Real Madrid with Jose Mourinho was a team to be reckoned with. Like they broke Pep's Barcelona's regime in more ways than one, not just on the football pitch. Mourinho also poked people's eyes on the sidelines as well. There were other tactics deployed, but not that I'm very proud of it. But that is my definition of defensive football. But when it comes to offensive football, you're looking at the gegenpress of Klopp. You're looking at, even if you look at Zidane, right? All about flair, Ancelotti, flair. Individual brilliance will always steer the way. Pep as well, other than the tiki-taka during Barcelona, the city Pep is extremely attacking. What do you think? Who are the defensive coaches or the defensive style that come to your mind?
See, again, I echo with what you are saying at the base level. Yes, when a defensive coach is someone who makes defense as the foundation. Like we start with defense and then we move forward. And an offensive coach is like we will attack, and attack is the best form of defense. So offense is the best form of defense kind of philosophy. Now Pep's and Cruyff's philosophy is if we have the ball all the time, that means that the opposition can never take the ball and score a goal. So that's the basic foundation of that Cruyffian philosophy of football. So as you said, like when you talk about Italian football, the great Arrigo Sacchi's, that era, and now it has been passed on to the Ancelottis, the Contes, the Sarris, etc. Now Sarri is a different case. Sarri is probably the odd one out of all the Italian coaches. He is someone who likes to play through the press, play the ball more than the traditional Italian style. So that is one way of looking at it. Now, if we kind of split this defensive and offensive into two other further branches. Now, again, I'm not trying to tag one as negative or positive. Let's just put the disclaimer out very, very clearly to whoever is listening. Like, we are not saying any style of coaching is a bad or a good style coaching. We totally agree and accept that there are more than one way to win a game, and every ways has its own merits and demerits in its own ways. Now, coming back to the point, coaches that focus on result and can change and are very flexible in terms of changing their process and how they are achieving it, versus someone who is very, very rigid on the process. Like for example, Conte, if we put Conte as, let's say he's a defensive coach, but he is someone who puts process first. Like he's very, very clear on where a player should stand, where a ball should go, where the receiver should receive the ball, etc. Unlike other coaches, like for example, we talk about this like Zidane a lot, who is like more flair.
It also comes another question that pops to my mind. Like these are the guys who were outstanding footballers themselves. If you look at Antonio Conte, you look at Pep Guardiola, if you look at Zidane,
Interesting.
Ancelotti, right? So they know the ins and outs of football about how what's worked, what doesn't work, right? But I think it creates. I mean, I just came to mind, like in football especially, right? There are defense and offense, but it's so much more than that in terms of managerial styles. If you look at the biggest criticism, say an Ancelotti or a Zidane had was that they are people's managers. Like they like to make the team happy uh, at the risk of a lot of things, right? Zidane was heavily criticized. Like he's not a tactician. He just talks to the players well, motivates them, and what can they say? They're talking to Zidane. But hey, he won back to back Champions Leagues, right? Pep Guardiola is a perfectionist. Like we've seen so many of those Amazon Prime shows, All or Nothing for Man City, which was like an incredible. Like it opened up my perspective about Pep Guardiola in so many ways because he is obsessed with the sport. Like that's the fundamental part about Pep Guardiola. He's obsessed. Every minute he thinks about football, and he cannot associate with players in his team who do not. So everyone is under pressure all the time, right? And how does that passion translate on the football pitch is all everything that Pep asks. So that's why when you're playing at that high pressure levels, sometimes it breaks, and that's where I think you expect those results out of a Pep team. So I think also comes down to that. Like, question to you, Bala: any non-footballing coaches besides say a Mourinho that come to your mind that have a very distinct style?
So when it comes to see other than football, the one other team sport that I have watched a lot in my life is cricket. So obviously, if I have to turn my eye away from football, it naturally falls on cricket. Now, cricket coaching as a concept came in only towards the late 80s and the early 90s, and cricket is again a kind of sport where captain carries a lot of responsibility in terms of on-field tactics and etc. That's why in cricket you find a level-headed person more than like the best player in the team need not always be the captain. That need not always be the case in cricket. So yeah, when it comes to cricket, the one coach that actually showed the importance of a cricket coach was Dave Watmore because he brought that Sri Lankan team. I mean, people like us who have watched Sri Lanka somewhere in the early 90s where they are not a great team. I have watched Sri Lanka before 92, 91 that time and they were not a great team. So from that in 4 years winning the World Cup, that was quite transformational. He brought in a lot of modern techniques into cricket coaching. He brought in a lot of processes because until then, it's just man management. As you were just pointing out, cricket coaching was more man management, and let the captain decide what happens on the field. So coach's responsibility is to make sure that coaches are basically like managers. If the people who have watched that 83 movie will understand, the guy the one who was played by Pankaj Tripathi is a manager.
I think it's a very good point, and especially in the '96 World Cup, right? I think Bala, you're referring to the '96 World Cup for people who don't know which Sri Lanka won. The one big transformation, in fact, that changed the game in ODI cricket was how to attack in the first 15 overs. Led by Sanath Jayasuriya and Kalu Vitharana, Sri Lanka took every team by surprise by their attacking prowess and just like all out attack no matter what in the first 15 overs. Nobody actually ever did that. Nobody even thought of it. That fielding restrictions on, this is where you blast. So I think in most of the matches in the first 15 overs, Sri Lanka were already 100 plus runs, which was unthinkable at that time.
Actually, sorry to interrupt. To be fair, that idea of power hitting, the first 15-hour power hitting was started in 1992 by Martin Crew.
Okay.
So there was this player called Mark Greatbatch.
Yeah.
So a New Zealand left-hander opener. So he so Martin Crowe used this technique to let Greatbatch go, and New Zealand won every game, and they only lost to Pakistan.
Let's put it this way: the Sri Lankan openers made it global.
Agreed, 100%. The one who made it global, the one who made it successful was Jayasuriya and Kalavitarna. There is absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think, and you're very right about, cricket is more of the captain's sport. But I think, there are a couple of examples that I have in mind who basically helped a team change their mentality. When you look at Ian Wright for India. India was at that time a very average.
John Wright.
Sorry,
You
John
meant
Wright.
John
John
Wright.
Wright. John Wright. Sorry, my bad. There's so many rights. I
मेरे
was wrong.
आर्सेनल फुटबॉलर कब आया इंडिया का?
हाँ, मैं भी सोचा थोड़ा कलर भी बदला
Sorry,
गया.
go
हाँ,
ahead.
but so John Wright at that time India was a very average fielding team. What he did was that he made India fit. Like as a team, he like promoted and focused on fitness. That you have to be great athletes before being great cricketers, and it suddenly saw a huge change in how Indian cricket players started fielding, behaving on the pitch. That was the rise of the Mohammad Kaifs, the Yuvraj Singhs. We had our greatest ever fielders were Azharuddin in slips, uh, Jadeja and Robin Singh.
Robin Singh.
Yes, like we didn't have such a great, like they were great fielders, but it was not such a high bar to cross. But then suddenly with the Mohammad Kaif, the Yuvraj Singh, it just changed the game for us. Like we just started looking at cricket very differently, and I think that mentality, I think that is the greatest contribution a coach can bring into cricket, especially is how do you change the mentality into everything you do. And we have other great examples. John Buchanan for the Australian cricket team that dominating years. You have Gary Kirsten soon after John Wright. So yeah, I think in cricket it's more about the mentality more than actual tactics.
Actually, just to round this entire topic, and you kind of interestingly brought in the concept of cricket coaches and how cricket coaches work. You gave some really great examples, John Buchanan, Gary Kirsten. Now, if you look at all these coaches, right, and especially in cricket, I'm saying, it's also very important for a coach to let the captain be the face and coach be the man behind the scenes type. Like, don't step over the captain's face, and which is exactly what Greg Chappell tried to do. Which is exactly what Greg Chappell tried to do. He wanted to, be the man, to be in front of cameras, and and that Ganguly didn't like. So he kicked Ganguly out of the team, and the perfect replacement is Rahul Dravid. I love Rahul Dravid, I've said this many times, but he can be kind of a pushover. So it was easy for Greg Chappell to deal with Rahul Dravid, so that he can go over Rahul Dravid and access the team by himself. Which is again, if you see the example of Gary Krishnan, he didn't do it. He absolutely let Dhoni take the power, and the same thing even Ravi Shastri did it. So he kind of let Kohli take the center stage, and that's why it's not just the coach, it's the coach captain that brings in that success. So for Buchanan, you had Steve Waugh, you had Ricky Ponting. I mean, exceptional leaders, like leaders of top-notch quality. So very interesting to read different styles of coaching and this thing. Any significant? Sorry, you're saying something.
I think that in terms of mentality, I wanted to pivot to a sport that I follow a lot. That's basketball, and the one coach that comes into my mind, who basically is probably in the Mount Rushmore of coaching across all sports, is Greg Popovich for the San Antonio Spurs. Now, just to give you a little high level know-how about him, he's been the coach of the San Antonio Spurs for about 23 seasons. In that time, there have been about 300 plus coaching changes across all teams in NBA. But he has stood tall as one. Out of the 23 seasons, he's had a winning record. In basketball, it's called the plus 500 record. So if you have a 50% plus winning ratio across 82 games in the regular season, you have a winning record. That's across all American sport. Out of 23 seasons, he's had it in 22 seasons, right?
Wow.
He's had 5 NBA titles. And the one thing he did, and one of his greatest mantras people can use it in business, is like how to create an unselfish team. How can you create a team that works as a team, not for the individual? And he promotes that. There are certain, it's another discussion I can do on Greg Popovich. He has pillars where he basically helps young kids who are coming from college to the NBA. How do he opens up the world to them? Like, lets them be involved in politics. He himself has a voice. Like, he was one of the biggest, speakers for Black Lives Matters. and he helps people grow as individuals and men, and those guys become his team. And that is, he's done so much for the sport. He's done so much for the entire organization as a large, and over and above, it's just tactical. Because basketball is a very tactical sport. It's not about one superstar can win you a title. Otherwise, Michael Jordan would have had 20, right? It doesn't work like that. It's all about how do you function as a team? How do you create cohesion? So Greg Popovich came to my mind because anyone who are listening, read up about him. There's so much to be learned in life about how Greg Popovich does sport.
Yeah, and also like people who have watched The Last Dance, like me, might keep Phil Jackson as one of the examples, or even Steve Kerr. So yeah, I mean, again,
Phil Jackson, just to end his point, Phil Jackson had a very different style. He was an aggressive coach, and he believed in something called ISO ball, which is the superstar needs to have the ball at all times. And at that time, the superstar was Michael Jordan. And later on, when he was the Lakers coach, it was Kobe Bryant. Hence, created the rift between Jordan and Pippen, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, because they thought they were the biggest star, right? So it's a different strategy, equally successful.
on that great note, let's end this discussion. I hope you guys had fun listening to our opinions on what we think about various coaching and managerial styles. Now, if you guys want us to discuss any other topic, please do let us know. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram @Sports Charcha. It's one word, no space between sports and Charcha. Please do like, comment, subscribe, and also let us know if there is anything that you want us to discuss. And obviously, you can leave your comments and feedback, etc. there. Great. That brings us to the end of this section, and in the next section we have our speed point section where we will quickly go through the updates from around the world of sports.
Absolutely world class.
Hello and welcome back to Sports Charcha. We are now in the speed point section where, as I was saying in the first section, we are going to discuss the biggest upset of the weekend. It is the 16-year-old Indian Grandmaster R. Pragnananda, see I can pronounce it nicely, picked up a big win. I mean, he stunned world number one Magnus Carlsen. I mean, people who don't know who Magnus Carlsen is, who have been living under the rock, please, he is the world champion right now. He's the world champion in chess.
Do you think, Bala, do you think after the match, Magnus Carlsen said, चल rematch, एक बार और चलना rematch खेलना, डर रहा है क्या?
This is not the Rocky movie, man. But yeah, amazing achievement. I mean, India actually, we have known to produce grandmasters, young grandmasters a lot, and this is like another feather in India's chess cap. One interesting anecdote, like I have once played against Vishwanathan Anand. I mean, it's not the right way to put it. There was this chess tournament. I used to play a lot of chess as a kid. So I used to go to these chess tournaments and play a lot. Never used to win. And then towards the end of one of the chess tournaments, Vishwanathan Anand was the special guest to give away the prizes. So as a flagship event, they wanted to do a rapid chess tournament where Anand plays against 30-35 kids at the same time. Like he walks across 30-35 this thing at the same time and plays. So I was one of those 35 kids who played. Obviously lost.
How many moves did it take for you?
Yeah, it was about like 7-8 moves, man. Like it's not even like it was not even a contest. After that, I was at awe only. Like, I've been like watching him only all the time.
Guys, for people who are followers of Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Bala gets awed by Vishwanathan Anand.
Hey, why not, man? He's a legend. Talking about history, US Soccer and the Women's Players Association, they agreed to settle equal pay lawsuit. Now, Ishan, why do we think this is a very significant moment in sporting history?
I think one of the reasons this worked is that it's all about timing, right? US sport or US football there's been so much money being invested into it, especially in the men's side. But if you look at the last decade or so, who are the which men among the men or the females, which are the ones that have got success? It's the women's side, right? The men have struggled to qualify for Olympics, for the World Cup, sorry, and this year might again be a tough struggle for them. But the women's team has been winning the World Cups. They're the most successful team to play the sport, and the timing of this lawsuit came at a time where the women's sport in US soccer was the one people were actually going to the stadiums to watch, and not the men's, right? And hence this played all in their favor, because and why this is so monumental in all of sport, not just football, is that recognition has always been a problem in the women's side of the sport, and we've seen that in the American sports year after year. We've seen the first NBA head coach in the women's be a female. We are now seeing it in baseball, but this is very important because uh, it's a big flaw. It's a big disparity. I think tennis resolved it to an extent where they significantly increased the payouts for the women's champions. But this is very important in the women's sport because you somehow feel that the women's World Cup is there, but then after that nobody watches women's football. But that needs to change, right? Because and that has to be led by champions. There has to be led by personalities. So you look at Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan. These guys are like they're like superstars, right? They're not just fighting for football. They're fighting as like individual leaders on their own. So I think the timing of this was great, and I think this is amazing news, amazing news for the rest of the world in women's sport.
Yeah, and we both have been crying for a women's IPL for a very long time, and I know like you love women's Big Bash League, the quality that brings in, the kind of entertainment that brings in. It's actually, and also it's, as you said, it's not just in women's football or women's soccer. Every other major football association or football body or any team sport in general, those authorities should have a better look at themselves, and they should start changing ASAP. I mean, like, see, this has been, as you said, it has been unfair for a very long time, and I hope this is the beginning where people start seeing these popular team sport as gender neutral and not being men's sport. So hope this brings in that necessary change.
I have one point to say. I might get a lot of hate for it. I want your opinion on it. In women's in tennis, right? I think Novak Djokovic was one of the guys who, the rebel we all know, and we'll get to him as well. But he said that there needs to be a differentiator in prize if men are playing 5 sets and women are playing 3. What do you think about that?
No, I don't think I agree with that, because that is, well, that's a very I don't know how to articulate it. Okay, let me put this way. You're paying for the entertainment, right? You're not paying for the longevity of the game. Just because you're playing for 5 sets, that means I have to pay you more. I play for 3 sets, I have to pay you less. Now, in that case, then in men's game also, many games ends in 3 sets, right? So like what? Like, will I pay less for a 3-setter game? Like, so I'll demand 5 set, play 5 set every time. So I don't think that argument is a very valid argument. Like, for example, you can watch a test match, a 7-hour test match for a lesser cost in a stadium than watching a 90-minute football match. So
That's a very good point.
the how long you play
It's a very good
doesn't
point.
matter. All right, sticking to women's sports, India women's team, they tour. In fact, they are in the middle of a tour in New Zealand, and unfortunately, they have lost all their games. So the entire series has 1 T20 and 5 ODIs. So we lost the single T20 and we have lost 4 ODIs, and the 5th one is tomorrow morning. I mean, we are recording this on Wednesday night, 23rd Feb. So tomorrow morning Indian time, the 5th ODI will be played. There was a slight controversy before the beginning of the series that Smriti Mandhana, 2 other pacers, Meghna Singh and Renuka Singh, were actually kept under quarantine for a longer period. The last I read, it was still a mystery that they didn't know what's happening, but the New Zealand authorities have kind of put them in a higher risk category so that they had to quarantine for a longer period, because of which Smriti couldn't feature in the first 4 games. She just played the last ODI, and naturally, like, she really couldn't make any impact. And there has been a lot of controversy on Harmanpreet's captaincy also. People have started questioning her credibility for being the ODI captain. So yeah, interesting changes we could expect in India.
It's the flavor of the season right now, India and its captaincy.
That's true. That's true. No, that actually beautifully segues up into the next one, which is the India West Indies series that just ended. It's still going on. I don't even care, man. I don't even know like what's going on. I just know that India won all the games. We didn't lose a single game. 1 or 2 games there was a slight resistance from West Indies, but apart from that, there was absolutely nothing. And it was fun to watch some absolute power hitting from the West Indies batsmen or batters.
Yeah, man, but the thing is that it's powerful hitters for fighting a lost cause. It was almost like a charity game, it was not too fun to watch. I saw a couple of games while I was at in a drinking session, and it still wasn't enjoyable after many drinks because you know the result from the onset. But yeah, meaning the news I think we need to pivot to is the new Test captain, which we all knew who it was going to be.
Yes.
Mr. Rohit Sharma.
Surprise!
Hey, I was not in the Test squad for many years, but hey, now I'm captain. So I don't know how that will go. I have my doubts about that because I believe Rohit is unbelievable. Rightful captain in the shorter format, long format. I don't know.
Cool. I mean, when I see a bit of Dhoni in Rohit Sharma, he is very tactical. He understands his players' strengths and weakness very well, and he's able to communicate that to the players also. Every time I have seen him turning up to Bumrah for Mumbai Indians, Bumrah always picks him a wicket. I mean, he kind of like knows it. It's a click. He has that thing with Bumrah.
But Bala, if you were Mumbai Indians captain, you would also turn to Bumrah only.
Very, very valid point. Yeah, it's not master tactician. I mean, anyone can do it.
Meaning
you are right.
It's not like, some strategic thing happening here. If he turns to Krunal Pandya in the 19th over, then and wins a match with that, then that is great captaincy.
Great. See, nothing happened in La Liga this weekend. I mean, nothing happened in the sense that nothing significant happened. All the top teams won their game. In fact, won quite comfortably, except for Sevilla, though. And in Bundesliga, it's the same old. Bayern winning, Dortmund winning. Nothing has changed there also. In League on, PSG lost, but they are still some million points away from the second team, and they are going to walk away with the league title. However, in Serie A, things got a little interesting. All the 7 teams lost points, dropped points. Milan dropped points against the number 20th team, Salernitana. Inter, again, after a disappointing loss to Liverpool in the Champions League, Midweek Champions League, they again lost to Sassuolo at home 2-0. So again, we were talking about this last week, that Inter's season can go from awesome to awful in no time, and looks like they have to do something very, very quickly to let this slide stop. Otherwise, Napoli again drew their game. Juve drew their game against Torino. Atalanta lost. Atalanta again is on a slippery slope. Looks like they will slip out of the top 4 finish. Looks like Juve might sneak in. So Roma dropped points. Mourinho kicked the ball into the stands, got red carded, and apparently he made a telephone gesture to the referee, whose father was accused, or one of the accused referees in the Culture Police scandal. So he kind of made this gesture as the referee. Now again, I'll have to make this very clear that this was just, he did the gesture, but no one knew why he did it. The reason is speculation. What we are saying is speculation. So we just have to make that very clear.
All in all, it was a very normal Mourinho match, basically.
He's becoming this caricature, man. I don't know. I have seen him I have a lot of respect for him still. So it's kind of pains me a little to see him do like this. So we had NBA All-Star this weekend. Apart from the fact that it was played between Team LeBron and Team Durant, I knew nothing about it. So Ishan, why don't you help us out?
So I think I'll be very honest with you. Every year passes, the NBA All Star is becoming more of a fun-filled enjoyment, entertainment scheme, and not actually a let's see the stars play against and with each other. It's unfortunate because I preferred it the old way, where you could see Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan against each other, fighting it out. It was more East versus West. There was a lot to play for. Now it's just dream team building, like tip top करके हम लोग cricket team बनाते हैं types. But even in that, we saw Team Durant, Team LeBron had Stephen Curry, who actually had one of the greatest All-Star games ever. He hit 16 three-pointers, 4 of them without looking. And when I say without looking, it's very different in basketball. What he did was he shot the ball, and there are iconic photos of this. You can see it on Instagram. He shoots the ball and turns his back to it while the ball is in the air, which means he knows it's going in. And these are like from the logo, from the halfway court. He's doing this, and he's done this all season, but to do this in the biggest stage, not in the most important stage, but the biggest stage where the world is watching, is incredible. The other entertaining part, which is a bit stupid to be honest, there, Ranveer Singh was part of the Celebrity All-Star game. I have no idea how. He obviously was atrocious, but because he was Ranveer Singh, a lot of people watched it and congratulated him. But meaning good for us, like, hey, obviously Aaj Tak would pick it up like India के superstar ने US को धमाकेदार performance दी. And everyone will like, what the fuck? Like Indian is in NBA, but no, it was Ranveer Singh, guys. Take a chill pill. But it was fun.
This is a continuation of our previous episode's topic. We were talking about how NFL is trying to enter Indian market. Maybe this is the way NBA is trying to enter Indian market.
I'll be like, NBA has done this for a really long time in terms of doing it the right way. I feel in sport, like before COVID, every year they used to have exhibition games in Bombay, where and proper NBA teams used to have a friendly. They used to have NBA camps. NBA India camp used to be very, very good. Like, used to have legends coming, actually taking coaching sessions with Indian players and kids. So they did it the right way. Like how football, there was how Arsenal did it many years ago in India about building footballing camps. But this is more gimmicky, this is more money making. This basically, Ranveer Singh is a face. I'll admit that. I like him. But, come on, man. Like, it's,
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, sports loyalist. It hurts. Like, you get Sachin to play the celebrity game, although height matters in basketball. I still feel like he's done something in sport, but like Ranveer is a little different.
Alright guys, that's about it for today's episode. As usual, we had a lot of fun recording it. I hope you guys had a lot of fun listening to it. In fact, we are going to continue this format of picking up a particular topic every episode and go a little deep into it and share our opinions and perceptions about that. Now, this is Wednesday night, as I was saying before. All the best if your teams are there playing in the Champions League and in the Europa League. So we will come back to you next week with another interesting topic and a lot more updates from around the world of sports. Now, until then, it is bye from Bala.
And bye from Ishan, guys. And feel free to suggest some topics if you have something in mind. We'd love to, do our study on them and share our opinions and perspectives.
Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, and also please, like we are literally begging, to rate our podcast on whichever app you are listening to. It not only helps us but also helps new listeners to find our podcast easily. You can also reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram @SportsCharcha. A big shout out to the Jam Room Audio for our theme music. You can follow the Jam Room on Facebook @the Jam Room Audio. Bye.